what is life? It's everyday choices we made. And it's tiny, tiny choices. Sometimes we, and every person in life, I believe, did huge choices. Scary, logical maybe, against to parents or pro something person believes. And that's what shaping the life. It's not every day as it is, but some choices at some point of life, that what brings me here, where I am right now.
Welcome to another episode of The Rooted Founder. This one is super unique. I am talking about what it was like to grow up in Russia from someone who grew up in Russia, who was born in 1983. And we're comparing and contrasting our experiences since I grew up in America and I was born in 1985. We're talking about what was it like to grow up there? What did it feel like on the playground at school? What did our parents do for work? Could they own property? Did they pay taxes? How did neighbors treat each other? Could they build wealth? What did that look like? Could they worship who they wanted to worship? Was there free speech? So we're going to be talking about all of these types of things because I think it's interesting. I met her at a Entrepreneurial event and was fascinated by her story. We have some personal things that each has happened in our lives that were hard, that were challenging, that we had to overcome. We grew up in very different worlds and had to navigate them. And I think how the world is right now, people are curious what the differences are, what it was like, what is the experience. So the guidelines for this podcast or this episode is different than my previous ones or my typical ones. So what this is just a conversation of two girls who grew up in different worlds, and we're just sharing our experience. This is our unique lens on our life and our experience, and we realize people have different experiences and different lenses. We're just sharing ours, and we encourage you to comment in the comment section what your experience was like, where you grew up, what you had as some of these talking points that we're going to be addressing. Also, it's a teaser to encourage everyone to travel and pursue experiences firsthand. I had an opportunity about 10 years ago. Yeah, I think it was 2014. I went over to Lithuania with Simon Black of Sovereign Man and got to experience an entrepreneur camp there in a different country. And I had the opportunity to room with a girl from Russia, room with a girl from Ukraine, room with a girl from China, and room with a girl from Japan. And it was so interesting to hear their unique stories about their upbringing, what it's like in comparison to what the media was saying. And it was very insightful for me. So I hope that this will encourage you to take the initiative to travel and get real world firsthand experience from people who are living in different parts of the world, because it's very interesting. What this is not political opinion. This is not analysis about different types of government. We aren't advocating for certain policies. We're just simply sharing our insights and our experience because I find it personally very fascinating. I like historical books, historical fiction, and historical nonfiction also. And so I think that this hopefully will be a conversation that encourages you. This is also another guideline is just to respect and allow the dignity of everyone's personal experience and their personal path in life. We all have peaks and valleys, and we have roadblocks and obstacles that we encounter. So all that to say, I'm excited for this conversation, Margarita, because your experience growing up in Russia is very insightful. And one thing just to tell everybody, you will hear it in her voice, but she speaks Russian. So this is her first podcast in English. And you might want to turn the closed caption on because she can get really excited and really animated. And I love that about her. And then sometimes from the English perspective, it's like putting the wrong emphasis on the wrong syllable. And so it's hard to understand, but I love her. and I love the wisdom that she's going to be bringing. So, Margarita?
Yes, Staci, thank you for such an introduction. Two different worlds, me, and I'm sorry ahead for my language, for my accent, and for excitement I might get, and how it will turn out to, will you be understand to me able or not? So here we are. That's first-hand experience.
So the start of why we even decided to do this conversation, she and I went to a steakhouse in Montana and had this conversation over steaks.
Yep.
And I said, what was it like in Russia? And so let's start at the beginning. You were born in 1983.
Yes, and back then it was not Russia, it was Soviet Union.
Yes.
That's the sign to remember. Yes, I was born in 1983 in Soviet Union, and my early childhood happened in that formation of the country. So, as we have seen in Russia, I tried to live in historically important periods of time. So I saw it all. Let's say this way: country collapse, and then formation of a new country, new society, and all of that. And it's quite a story. So
Yes.
let's share it.
So let's talk first about your parents, because you were born in Soviet Union. And maybe let's go back 2 generations. So grandparents, parents, you.
Yep.
What did your grandparents do?
My grandparents from my mother's side, my granddad was the, if translated to English, right, the position head of technical department for oil company in Russia. I grew up, let's start with this point. I was born and grew up until I went to university in small town, like 10,000 people town, central part of Russia. It's Volgograd region. It's former Stalingrad, where the Battle of World War II took place, and all of that. And the town was in the middle of nowhere, and it's still. So the closest railroad is 200 kilometers, 150 miles. So we were detached from the world pretty much. And if you want to go somewhere and see something like theater or something, you have to drive 200 miles at least.
So did you guys live off the land there?
That town was created based on the oil mining, oil extraction. I believe in 1960, where the first oil appeared on a river. So, and it's the whole industry of the town was to support the oil extraction process. That's pretty much it. And everybody, I mean, not everybody, yes, of course, there were supporting infrastructures, but most of the people were working in that industry. So, and it doesn't look like you work in oil company, you're good. No, it was different back then.
What does it look like? So explain what it looks like. Paint a picture of what it looks like there.
Okay, again, it was Soviet Union. Everybody was the same. Average, the deviation of salaries was maybe 5-10%, not much. You have high education, not have high education. Yeah, there was deviation, definitely. But the whole idea of Soviet Union was that everybody is average and everybody have the same amount of everything. Pretty much, sometimes it feels like not much. But everybody average, and there was, in my childhood, there was no jealousy in kids, not much, because we were all the same. There was nothing to show off or nothing to put other person down or something. It's like we have the same lifestyle. Our parents had like pretty much the same income. We lived the same apartments. That's how it was.
So your grandparents are in the oil industry.
My grandfather, he was a technical director, so he was taking care of all the machinery of that. And my grandmother, they had 4 kids, and she was working in a shoe store selling shoes. Yes, very average family. My mom was born in 1956, so it's 10 years after the war. I know we're not talking politics, but I would like to mention World War II because it has huge impact on the history and how everything developed. So both of my parents witnessed the war. Grandparents, sorry, from both sides. Both of my grandparents witnessed the war, and in Volgograd region where I grew up, it's actually where it actually happened. And my granddad from father's side, he was participate in a battle. Of course, everybody did, and he went to Berlin, so he has long way of that journey. So, and all of these war stories, as your podcast about the dinner tables, that's when we met for like some celebration, holidays, birthdays. We always like, oh, grandpa, tell me about the war. So, and even like we have in Russian, it doesn't matter what it is, it build up about the talk about that. So for me, for kids, as a child, I didn't understand much what was it, what is it about, and it was just curiosity. Yes, we studied in school, we had our dates to celebrate, and it had huge impact on the country, on the society, and like they're saying, there is not a family when at least one person in the family died in the war. So of course it's impact everyone. Sorry, it kind of turned out to that point. But if you talk about my grandparents, that's what their life was.
Yes,
Their experience.
I think this is important because my great grandparents also were in wartime.
Yep.
And they also fought. And they also participated in it. And we don't have to talk about sides, but it was that same experience. I remember hearing from my great grandfather many war stories and painful stories about what my great grandmother witnessed and experienced. And my grandfather came over from the Philippines just after the war. And when I asked him why he wanted to come to America, he said because he wanted to be in the land of his heroes, to be where he thought freedom was. And then he married my grandmother, and they met at Stanford. And at that time, in the 1950s, 1960s, she wasn't allowed to wear pants on campus. She could only wear a skirt. And she wanted to do welding. And so her professor would leave a pair of pants in his office for her. And she would go into his office, change out of her skirt, put her pants on so she could weld. And then she'd have to go back into his office, put her skirt back on before she could leave the welding place. And so I remember them telling stories about wanting more freedom and wanting more choice and wanting more options. And in America, I did not experience what you experienced. I didn't experience war in my hometown growing up. I had a lot of peace in my hometown growing up. So what was it like for you to go from Soviet Union to no government? I know, and then a new government. What was that like?
Yes, I would like to mention about my parents. They were born both in mid 50s, 1955, 56, and it's the definition of generation, right? As we have Y, X now. It was first peaceful generation after war, let's say it this way, who 10 years passed of the war, they didn't experience it, and it was more or less calm years in the history. And everybody was rebuilding country, industries was developing, and all of that. And since Soviet Union was from 1917, when the revolution happened. And it was so imprinted in the philosophy of my grandparents, my parents, me, supposedly, that the only option people knew, which was the Soviet Union, communism, all of that, the structure, the lifestyle, all of that. I mean, Soviets did very good job to erase everything what was before. So, and for my parents, for example, when 1991 happened, when the Soviet Union collapsed, it was extreme shock. That's the generationally what you grew up into, and then it's gone, and nobody knows what's next. And that's actually where no information, no clue.
You're what? How old are you? 8 years old at this time?
I was 8 years old, yes. And I remember it was summer, it happened in August, and 8 years old, right? You running with the friends, come in, get some snack, go back. And I came in, and everybody is sitting at the table and looking at each other silently. I'm like, what happened? And they're like, a lot happened, but we don't know what it's gonna cost. So that's how shocking it was. Maybe not for all of the people who at that point, but for my relatives, yes. And I only can imagine what they felt back then for themselves, for kids, because in Soviet Union everything was pretty much predicted. They have 5 years plan for the industry, for the country. You know, if you get your education, you're gonna work, you're gonna get that salary till the end of your life. Simple. No deviation. But now, nothing certain.
So, okay, so let's break this down for people who maybe don't know what this experience is like. So, your grandparents and your parents, they have a set salary. They have set jobs. They have set education for their kids.
Set free education for everybody in the country. Yes, and everything was predetermined. There is no deviation. You cannot have business in Soviet Union. You go to jail for that. You cannot, if you artist, all of your creation belongs to country. If you inventor, everything belongs to a country. So there was no way to rise above anyhow. Or if you're sportsman, it's all the same. You fight for the country, that's it. Maybe you get some extra food or extra, I don't even know how you say it in English. Some extra money, let's say, extra salary. If you're a very good sportsman, that's it. It was all simple, predetermined. It was not easy life because whatever people had back then was not enough. And it all depends where you grew up. I know here in the United States, right? I have friends from different parts of Russia, Soviet Union, Ukraine, Lithuania, as you said. And we have quite a different stories. If a girl same age as me grew up in Moscow, she has no issues with food supply, clothes supply, or anything. But in regions where I grew up, small one, we pretty much had to be creative how to get stuff. Not me, my parents was, but that's how it was. And it's people like where we met, we were talking. I was talking with a guy who's like, "Oh yeah, I grew up in a small town, and we had only one McDonald's." I'm like, okay. I grew up in a town when we certainly will have to eat in the winter what we grew up in the summer. That was predetermined, nothing else. I'm not saying there was no food, but you have to do something extra to get food. There was huge lines. I remember my mother after work picked me up like from school, from music school. I went to music school, and so I stayed there later. And we have to go to the stores to buy some food. And there was lines for every type of food. And she put me in the line for one stay in line for another, and I was staying. I'm like, what's gonna happen if my turn comes and she's not here? That's how it was. And don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it was, oh my gosh, it was horrible and bad. I have absolutely amazing memories of my summer. It was, I mean, that's maybe childhood memory, how it works. But for me, I had amazing friends. What was amazing in Soviet Union, there was the core values, they were set up for kids and in adults and everywhere, like how people were brought up is like friendship, companionship, good sportsmanship, and there was pioneers clubs and all of that, and we had pretty much good friendship, and a lot of my friends from childhood we still friends, again because you were all the same, and the maybe only feature you could shine with is your personality, and you have to do something for that. So it was pretty good philosophy and politics in a country for kids to grow up. I think it's maybe one of the best things.
You really had a strong sense of community.
Absolutely. The community, I recently went to Norway and I believe they have the same type of philosophy now. It's kind of, yes, we not in the best position. They have pretty much salary set it up for everyone, huge taxes. And they're like, yes, but we pulling this train together. That's the whole country philosophy.
Mm-hmm.
And when I heard it, it's like, yeah, I know what you're talking about.
So was the sentiment that you had a strong sense of foundation, family, community, companionship, friendship, and the only thing you knew was everything was predetermined? So did people just accept that? Or was there a part of them that wanted to be ambitious, to be able to create, to be able to have some type of control of their future or destiny?
I believe there was people like that, but there was not much options for that. If you're so creative and unbelievably talented, you will get some piece of paper at the end of the year. And maybe some 10% salary, like bonus, that let's say this way. There was no, I know for you it's very difficult to understand. It's like you doing something extra, you get something extra. Pretty much that's the equation for America and Western world. But back then it doesn't matter what you do much. My parents was great specialist. My mother was always, we have like on the street, that's actually funny. I believe you don't have it. On the street, they have a board in the town, and they put the portrait and description of name and description what person do, and if that person perform well at the industry she's working, she's kind of the person of the year or of the month, or kind of, it was a little bit different but the same philosophy, and everybody in town walking and looking at it. That's where my mom portrait was.
Aww.
But there was nothing extra of that. Yes, it was a pride. It means you good citizen of the society, your input, but there was no option. It's like you create something, great, belongs to country. You don't get any royalties or patent or anything. My ex-husband father, he was quite a talented engineer and he had few patents during his life. He doesn't own any. That's, you belong to a country and everything you create belong to a country.
So, okay, this is interesting. So where you grew up, you didn't have individual property rights.
No.
So whatever you created, whatever you produced, whatever you accomplished or achieved or you did, it all was community property and belonged to the country that was distributed by predetermined things.
Yes, that's what the whole philosophy of communism.
Yes.
You put everything in one pot and split evenly. That's what it is. And for personal property, it was also predetermined because they build in housing like apartments. There was different era and different name of apartments pretty much. And if you you go to college, right? You finish college, you become a professional, and you go to work in like 1 year, you will be assigned an apartment. If you get married, you have to get apartment with 1 bedroom or something like that. If you get kids, you might get apartment with 2 bedrooms, maybe not. Me, I had older brother and family of 4 grew up in 1 bedroom apartment. That's how you call it here. All my life. And it was absolutely average. That's how all of us grew up. Whoever has 2 bedrooms is like, wow, that's something. You know, when I brought my kids, they've been to Russia only once. I'm mother of 3 kids in 2019. And I brought my kids to the apartment where I was grew up from, not grew up, we lived there from 14 years old, my 14 years old. And there 1 bedroom apartment. And they were keen and like, oh, grandpa, so excited. It's like they run around an apartment and it's like, okay, where is the stairs to go upstairs? For the American kids who grew up in 2-story house, I'm like, that's it, guys. Check reality check for you. So that's how it's different. And for so you get assigned to that apartment to when you achieve something, go to work 5 years later, and it's like you have to stay in line for the car. My parents, I believe, stay 6 years in the line for the car. Even if you collect the money for the car, you cannot get it. It's also figure it out when will you get it.
So, okay, so growing up, did you have a car?
Yes, my father had a car, but not every family had a car.
Not every family had a car.
No.
Even your getting a vehicle was predetermined. Like after you had worked a certain amount of time, or
You have to work certain amount of time. Yes, you have to have the money for that, and you have to get in line for that, and who knows when your turn will come. Yep.
Interesting.
I know. I know. It's maybe the open in the, we're not talking about politics, Iron Curtain, right? That's how it was. That's how it was.
So you had to wait in line to be assigned an apartment. You had to wait in line to get a vehicle. Did you have to wait in line to get married, to have kids, to get an education?
No, to get married, you can get married. And if you're 18, no, you don't have to wait. And to get kids, it's your decision. And there was actually what difference from United States, I believe, there was maternal leave for 3 years.
That is different.
It is a lot of difference. And you get salary, maybe less salary as you before you leave, but you have decent money and you raise your child till 3. You have rights for that. Or you can give it to a daycare at 1. That's how it was.
Did you have taxes, or was that already calculated into your...
That's a good question. I'm not quite sure. I mean, I believe there was some withdrawal from the salary. That's it. But there was nothing extra you have to pay at the end of the year, as you guys, all of us, doing in United States. But if you own the apartment, and if you get the apartment, doesn't mean you own it. You just live there until you work in that company, and if everything goes well and all of that. There was no ownership of apartments.
Mhm.
It's kind of you assigned to apartment to live there for some period of time. And I believe there was some taxes for apartment, but it's not 1% as we have in Seattle. It's some very small portion of it.
Okay, so to continue to help paint a picture of what it was like for you, did you guys go to church, or could you worship who you wanted to worship?
No. Okay, I shocked a little bit myself for that question because for me it's obvious and for you definitely not. Okay, in Soviet Union there was no God, no church, no beliefs. It was forbidden. I mean, there were small rural areas, some old church, and some of the churches were demolished by Soviets. That's how they were against it. So we don't have any church. We have Communist Party. They have their meetings. My parents used to go there, and they did do all of the philosophy, purposeful, and all of that talk there. No church. There was no church. And I mean, you have no right to. I mean, who else to believe if there are only one, the only one party? There is no deviation, nothing.
So you weren't able to think your own thoughts or speak your own perspective. The perspective was just what the country provided.
Yeah, that's interesting subject. I am reminding you, I was small. I did not get to the point where I could be punished, but I might if I was born 10 years early. Yes, you have the goal, but as a country, you have set up core values. You have the goal within the country. You have the outside enemy as a country, and all of that. Will not point fingers who. So and that's it. There was no deviation. Was there a free thinking people? Definitely. But if you want to experience or practice free of speech, you might get in trouble. There was even like songs, but it was in the 80s and later, because before 80s, everything was pretty much after Stalin, before 80s. It was, people were kind of used to it, but at 80s, there was start some boiling in society. That's why Soviet Union collapsed in 91. I mean, you cannot regret that. I mean, do not notice that part. And there was songs, there was different, not just communism songs as it used before when my parents grew up. And there was some bands who was trying to, they didn't do right, but express different opinion and different thoughts. And in one of those songs, it's like the phrase, one word for streets and some words for kitchens. So whatever you want to discuss it in your kitchen. But what you have to say it on the streets. And it's interesting. And don't get me wrong, I'm telling it as a child who didn't grow up in Soviet Union. I have few different story, but for my parents, they worship it. Even now, they didn't switch to any new line of history. They're like, yeah, when we were small, when we grew up at our times, it was all different, all good. I'm like, what good? You had no food to eat. No, you don't understand. It was so good. That's how people lived. And it was absolutely normal, but not for everyone. As different people in every society. And I'm like, okay, that's why me and my parents, we're not talking about politics at all.
It's interesting. Okay, so when you grew up then, so you heard stories of what you just shared from your parents and from what you witnessed.
Yep.
So one question before we move on to your personal experience. In that Soviet Union era, could you come and go as you pleased? Could you choose to go live someplace else?
Within the country?
No, outside of the country.
No, you cannot leave the country.
Okay. So
I mean, Soviet Union, now it's 15 countries. The republics, like Ukraine was Soviet Union, Lithuania was part of Soviet Union, Kazakhstan, all of that. It was a country. How it was working. That's actually what the good point for set the boundaries, what was predetermined. Once you finish college, you were assigned a job, but this job could happen in any part of the country. I mean, for example, my parents, my mom, she was from Volgograd, where I grew up. She grew up there too. And she finished college, and she was sent like 500 miles to another city because there was job opening for her there. And you cannot pick. They send you there, that's it. If you send you there and you young specialist, right, just finish college, it's not like you send there and you have to find somewhere to live. They would give you the dorm where all young specialists like that live. And then if you get married, you might get apartment. So it was predetermined, and everything was decided by country. That's how my mom went to that Samara region and met my father. And then when they had my brother, they grew up a specialist, they had rights to move. But after college, pretty much whenever you send, you have to go. And if it's another part of the country, that's where it is. But there was no international travel. It was close Soviet Union. I mean, there are some diplomats, maybe artists, ballet group. They did some travel, but each travel of that was accompanied by KGB officer, so no one ran away. Did you watch the movie Moscow on the Hudson?
I have not watched it.
With Robert Williams? You have to do it. It's so pretty well what it is about. It's one of example when the guy came with a circus for tour to America, and he ran away. And how he was established. It's exactly showing what it is. Like better than I will tell ever.
Okay. Well, I love that. Now we have a movie to go paint the picture. Explaining.
So that's why I'm saying everything was predetermined. You sent to there, but you have somewhere to live, and you come to people with the same core value because they grew up in the same philosophy. So it was one big happy country, as they promoted.
If all anybody knew, they didn't know different.
No different. No. Especially for my parents' generation. They were the one who didn't see the war. They were born after Stalin died. And it was kind of a glorious moment of Soviet Union, like 70s, 80s, partially. And I believe they are true believers. I'm not saying the whole generation, but most of it. But my parents truly are.
So when you're 8 years old and you come into your kitchen and you're seeing your parents around the dinner table just in shock that the Soviet Union is being overthrown.
Yep.
What was that like for you?
I didn't understand much. I mean, the only part I understand, I will never get upset at to pioneers, because you have to be in 5th grade, I believe, or 3rd to become a pioneer. And it was like the club the whole country went to. And I'm like, really? I will never be a pioneer? It was not my first realization. Later, I realized it. But then it's, again, it was shock for many people. For some people, it was happy moment. For some people, not. I believe, and what I see from experience from my friends, parents, whoever had the entrepreneurship abilities or virtue in them, look at it as an opportunity. Who did not, look at it as a disaster. And that's where the all split happened. It was very tough years for the country, for 99% of the population, because nothing was certain. Whatever was government production, there are who new government decided it's not valuable anymore, or there was a process. I don't know how to say it in English, but in Russia we say it privatization, where, for example, you had the machinery factory, and they're like, okay, somebody came 1991. That's why they call it crazy 90s. I'm like, that's mine. I do privatize. There was some schemes done, but that's the whole country was split between few people. And the people who was regular workers who were working at that plant, they might not get salary for 6 months, 1 year, and no one had much savings because everybody used to live from paycheck to paycheck, pretty much, because that's what the minimum to survive. And good for my family. My parents worked in different organizations, and each organization went through that process a different period of time. So at least my parents had at least one salary in the house all the time. So I believe that was helpful, vital, but there was not every family like that. It was crazy, crazy years. That's why there is a term in Russia, crazy 90s.
So then let's fast forward to 2000. Because in 2000,
Yeah.
you're a teenager.
In
And
2000, I finished high school. I was 17.
in high school, yes.
Yes.
And at that point, was the new government established and it was more
Oh,
societal?
yeah, it was before, and it's more calmed down a little bit by that time. And 2000, I believe, when current government took place, will not call names. So I believe it's in 98, 2000. I don't remember. So I finished high school. We were pretty stable, but our life didn't change much. We were same, average, nothing extra people. Yes, all the plants and industries got new management, but since we were in oil extracting service, it was vital for the country. My parents got a salary, and it was average, not crazy, unbelievably high or low, just average to live. But for me, I knew for sure, since all the education in Soviet Union was free, college, universities, it's all was free. But after that, you have to be sent to work whenever you've been sent. But it's all changed in 90s, and all the university become, you have to pay for your education. And there was only few spots left for most gifted talent, like scholarship. You have it here, grants, scholarship in United States, but the rest, majority has to pay for education. And for me, it wasn't, I'm thinking now how much it cost, and like, it wasn't even like big money, but for my parents, it was huge amount of money to pay for my education. And I was very eager to get high education, to get out of my small town and to try to live different life. And I was working hard for that. I finished my high school with highest honor of a class. Because of that, I had the opportunity to get to free spot in university, which happened, thanks God, because I don't know how I would study. And I went to university 2000, 2005, and it was different life already, and it's all was changing. And that's where my story began.
I have an interesting question because
Yeah.
I feel like every generation, they experience things with their parents or grandparents. They watch things, they experience things, and then they say, I want to take some of these things my parents did and continue doing it because it was good, it was fruitful, I benefited from it, I liked it, it resonated with me, it is my value system. And then there's parts of it, what I experienced, witnessed of my parents or grandparents that I don't want to take with me and I want to do something different. So you said that you wanted to get a higher education, you wanted to do some things differently. So I'm curious, from like, let's say 0 to 18 years old, before you go off to university, what were some of your biggest lessons that you thought, oh, my parents did this so well, and the government did this so well, and the community I grew up in did this so well, so I wanted to take it with me? And what parts did you say I want to do differently?
As I said before, I believe the most good thing out of all of it is core values of people and the community structure. It was different. I mean, of course, there are different people in every society, in every nation, but it was structured that way. Maybe it was painful process for some, but I know what's friendship. I know what's honesty. I know what to be a good citizen and how to put back to society, and it was imprinted, let's say it, in a mindset. But what and some of the people really struggling even till now, what was imprinted is like my parents have saying like that. We never were rich, there is no reason to start. How do you accept that?
Hearing that?
Yeah.
So when I hear that, I feel like people have different capacity, right? There's some people that have a capacity to want to create, innovate, maybe push the human race forward, push invention forward, push ideologies, ideas forward. And then there's other people who like to support people who do that, or who like just the predictability of the status quo or the certainty of the status quo. And so their capacity is to be more neutral, or like you said, you were average, like just to be more steady in their approach. And I think that human wiring is different, but that's all, like you said, programming, right? So some people are programmed with this belief that being rich is bad, or being expansive is greedy. And then other people have this belief that being rich creates jobs for people, being rich creates opportunity for people, being rich provides inspiration and growth that benefits all of humanity. And so I think to your point, like the imprints on our mindset is what controls our behavior. And so in America, we have more of a perspective that becoming rich is the quote unquote American dream, right? Like owning a home and being able to start a business, being able to create jobs for people, that is a good thing, that it creates opportunity and community in a different way. And then there's some people, I think, that live in America who think very similar to your parents, who think being rich is evil and that having money is bad. And I think that's one of the divides we have right now in America, is that very mentality that, and I don't think it's either or. I think it's both. Like there's that saying that the love of money is the root of all evil. And if the idol is money, then sometimes you can do things that is hurtful because the ends justify the means, and you idolize money. However, if the idol is not money and it is just a tool, money is a tool to do something good in the world, to create opportunity, to create invention, to create connection, to create community, like to create morals and values, to create dinner table conversation, to create all of that, and then money is a tool to do that, then it's a good tool to use.
I personally look at the money as an instrument of balance. What you give to the world, let's say this way, right? What you able to create, exchange your service or whatever you do, that's how you have to be compensated in order to keep the balance. And yes, you're saying exactly right thing, that there are different mentalities in every society. But when the whole society imprinted for one mentality and then it gone and nothing left, And as I said, whoever had entrepreneurship skills, they got very quickly, and they pretty much ruled the world, the country after that. So, I'm I'm not saying it's bad. Don't get me wrong. I believe it's amazing. If you invent something, you have to be compensated. If you give something to the society, you have to be compensated. But what was imprinted in me back then, because my family was paid from paycheck to paycheck philosophy, mentality for decades, and to be some black sheep, as I am. I mean, it's not easy.
Mhm.
But since you already some sort of black sheep, some sort level, you cannot hide it. So for me, it was very important to get out of my small town, to go to university, and then whatever happens, to put all my efforts. And by the time I finished university, I had work few jobs, which was not very common back then, to work at university. I know it is common in the United States, but then no, you go to study. So, and in order to live at least some sort of normal life, my parents support me during university. But I want some extra money. I had some jobs, and then I moved to another city in 2005. With all the list of my portfolio, what I can do already, I find a pretty well job like that. I had no struggles, because whoever finished university, there was no system. You will assign a job. You have to find a job. It was the whole switch. It was unbelievable switch. Was what people used to live and what it's become. And I totally understand why there are so many controversial opinions. Was
Yeah.
it good change or not? For some, it was good. Finally, we can be well rewarded for working hard. And for someone, whoa, we lived our lives counting on a pension, and it's gonna be this way, and it's gone. It's unbelievable. I'm not sure. Like many countries went through this, but it's, as I say, you tired of living in historical events. That's what it is.
And this is just so interesting because you grew up in an area that was going through an abrupt change. Like you go from being your whole life is predetermined for you to, hey, you now have choice in your life.
Yep.
And what you said was interesting also is that the people that wanted to have choice in their life quickly rose to the top and controlled more of the country because they exercised their right to choose, and they made choices that were beneficial to their family and their community in whatever way that looked like. And then for people who didn't want to choose, that preferred the more predetermined path, like explain to me, was what happened for them in Russia? Was it that the people that exercised their right to choose, did the people who chose that they preferred more predetermined path end up working for the people who exercised their right to choose?
Yes, there was a different, as I know, from friends I met here and everyone. A lot of the people, I'm not saying most, a lot of the people try to stay where they stayed. And if the company they used to work was not demolished or reformed and they could keep their job, that's what they try to do. That's what my parents, they worked 30 years in the same company. So it changed the management and country change, but since it was a very important industry, it stays. But some people, for example, I have a friend whose father was a scientist in physics, very like important, advanced one. And when Soviet Union collapsed, there whoever split the country, whoever got ownership, not ownership, the rule in the country, there was no money or program to support any innovations or support the industry which does not bring money tomorrow. And it's, I believe that scientists went through the most of the challenges, because you come to work and the whole institute you used to work not existing. And people, their stories, people keep coming for 6 months, doing what they do with no salary, just like what else to do.
So they continued working.
Yes.
Even
First of all, because they believe in science, that's what they I heard that stories. I didn't experience it. But they like, okay, tomorrow it will change back, or some good changes. You know, that thoughts, hope never dies.
Yeah.
So, and some of the people, it was 1991 when the Soviet Union collapsed, people got opportunity to flee the country. That's where all the scientists, not all, some of them left the Russia to United States and different countries. That's why I live in Seattle. We have software hub here. It's second Silicon Valley, and a lot of people moved in early 90s who had an education.
That in 1991, when the Soviet Union collapsed and the option to leave the country existed, a lot of the scientists and innovators chose to leave to come to the United States of America?
Definitely, yes.
Okay.
Not only scientists, some people who were learning software industry. Because Russia had a very good education system. That's actually a good one. Soviet Union, they had a very strong math, extremely strong, like way of teaching math. I see it's lacking here in the United States with my kids. I'm not saying it's bad, it's good or bad. It's different system. The way we learn math in my childhood and the way they learn it, I'm like, okay, guys. And they're like, oh, it's difficult. I'm like, oh my gosh, it's such a difference. And that's where all the companies, Microsoft, Google, all of it, that's where they got hired. And when Soviet Union collapsed, when the Iron Curtain fall, the companies start approaching students before they finish. Some of my friends here who moved like 96, 93, different years, they said like, I was in fourth year of 5-year education, and I knew after I'm done, I'm going to America. So they call it brain leak of the country, out of the country. And that's when it happened.
So you wanted to take forward with you from your upbringing was community, the dinner table, the friendship, the camaraderie.
Yep.
And collaboration, friendship. Then what you didn't want to take forward was you wanted to be able to choose. You didn't want your future predestined or predetermined by the country or government. You wanted to be able to choose. So when you got the option to choose, you decided to invest in your own education so that you could, like you said, brain leak. So your brain could be stronger. You could invest in your brain to have more intelligence, more creativity, more options. And then what did you choose to do with that? When you got higher education, what did you choose to do?
I got higher education. I finished technical university, and I got economics and management. That's what actually I recently was thinking about it, and I think I regret that part. I mean, the choose of profession. I was really good in math in school, and I love it. I believe I have to go to, how call it, math science. But back then, being manager was like cool, or economist. And I'm just like, okay, then I have go with the flow, But I believe I could use myself better if And I end up here in Seattle, not because of education I got. And I'm like, oh, I can use that better here for sure. I'm no complaining, but looking about different way of life could turn. So I got my education, and then I was pretty free spirit person, which uh, that not very well supported in my family, frankly speaking. We have good relationship, we love each other, but some points we don't even touch. So, and I first of all, I
When did you come to America? What year?
2007.
2000.
2007.
So 1991, it changes.
Yes.
8 years old.
Yes.
Two,
2000 I finished high school.
2000, you graduate. Okay, so let's pause there for a second, because in
Yeah.
2000, isn't that when 9/11 happened? Or we had Y2K and then we had 9/11.
Yeah, 1 9/11,
2000.
right? Yeah.
Was there any impact on you when that happened?
I mean, everybody was in shock, but United States was so far away from me personally. I know some kids already been there in my university even, but it was shocked, and I was not in the politics much then. Yes, it was a tragedy. Everybody was thinking about it, talking about it, and but that's pretty much how it was in
Okay.
2001.
And then you
I
go,
remember the day when it happened, and
oh yes, I remember the
yes,
day too. Yes.
but it was, yes, I sorry for the people it happened, for families, for country, but it was way far away from me personally.
I mean, that's an interesting perspective, because growing up in America, I didn't experience a lot of war on our soil at any capacity.
Yeah.
The only time there was something that happened during my lifetime that was on our soil was 9/11. But I remember growing up and hearing a lot of war in other countries. And to your point, like it wasn't close. So I was sad, and I was upset that it was happening. And I'm a young girl. I don't know how to solve it, what to do about it. I don't even know why it's happening. And I think maybe there's people growing up right now that's like, why are we even going to war? Why are we even doing this? They're advocating against it and don't really understand why it's even happening. Why can't governments just agree? Why can't we get along? And that's not a subject for this conversation, although very good questions to research and look into. So this happens, and then you finish university and then you get a job first in Russia before you come to America.
Okay, there is another part which related to our conversation.
Okay.
In Russia, university is 5 years education. 4 years you get bachelor degree, and on fifth you get your master degree. But in Russia, nobody left back then after bachelor degree because it was not enough. Everybody wanted a specialist with master degree. So 5 years it is. And after during the fourth years of education, me and my friend, we sit, drink tea, and then just like, why don't we go to America? That's actually how it was. Everything happened on the kitchen table, right? And I'm like, really? Why not? And we poor students, we have no rich parents or anything, just like every average student life. I'm like, what? And then it was a program, J1 visa, work exchange for summer. And that's the only window to America we could have. It's not like, for me, my friend, okay, I will tell it later. I'm like, okay, let's do it. And in order to get to that program, you have to pay a lot of money. For us, I believe it was $2,000 back then, but for us, it was unbelievable, crazy amount of money. Okay, we're like, we have to find a job, earn money, and apply for the program, which we did. For the reason we did it. right? Look, like, if talking about if you see the opportunity, what you're gonna do for that?
Mhm.
And we went to Moscow. We were studying in Samara, and we had to go to Moscow overnight train for embassy to get a visa to United States to enter country for that program for 3 months, I believe. And we went, and we were living like 6 months. That was a dream. I never had a dream before, like, oh, I have to go to America. I have to live in America. I mean, there was somewhere America. We saw the TV shows and all of that after Soviet Union collapse. I mean, cool, but where am I and where is America? That's pretty much was the story of my life. And then we got that, and we got mutual support in that dream, and it becomes so real. I mean, we have money, we need visa, the program will give us ticket, boom, we're going. And we went to consulate for visa, and my friend got visa and I did not. Yes.
Oh,
I was refused in visa, and when it was a visa, everybody got it.
do you
Like,
know, wait, do you know why?
no, there was some percentage they don't give visa, they supposed to do it in consulate. Somehow it was me. We were crying for a week. I'm not lying. Like 1 week we were crying. I'm like, no, it was a dream. She's like, even I don't want to go to America without you, because it was big dream. And I'm like, no, you have to go. That's opportunity. Maybe one time in a life, you have to do it. So she went there. Talking about the fate and twist in life. That was the twist, turning point. I went to, like, I left for summer, not in America. And I'm like, what to do? Because that's the only plan I have. And I went to my uncle in other part of Russia, which is have borders with Lithuania. It's in Europe. It's called Kaliningrad, former Königsberg. And I'm like, okay, I will go there. At least I'll see something new. Because we didn't travel much back then. I'm like, okay, I have to somehow pay back to me for all my efforts. It didn't turn out as a result. And I went there and I like the city, and I'm like, wow, it's unbelievable, because it's previously it was German city, and it was seized after during World War II. So it's now Russian region. It's mix of Soviet Union and German castles, and it's such a twist. It's like illusion. You kind of live partially in Europe. So, and I love it. I'm like, okay, I will finish university. I will move in here. My parents like, are you crazy? I'm like, it's another side of the Russia which has no borders with Russia. I'm like, okay, what? Why not? What holds me? I don't have an apartment. I'm renting. I believe I can find a job anywhere. I will finish university. I don't have husband, don't have kids, nothing. I'm not attached to anything. I just will buy one-way ticket and go. Their parents were like trying to convince me not to do it 1 year, but it happened. After I finished university in 2005, and I had a job in logistic company in where I was in university, and they couldn't let me go during summer because it's hot season. I had to wait till September. Then I quit and went to that city. I came, and my uncle is like, oh. I'm like, I'm gonna live for you at your place for like months or so. I need to settle. And he's like, okay. Maybe like, and now they're like, we were thinking when she's gonna fly back. I mean, like, but for me, there was nowhere to fly back.
So in your head, like if you were to stay where you grew up, you would be doing the same thing that your parents did, and you didn't want that life.
Oh, definitely not. I'm from 10 years old. I knew I have to do everything to get out of that city. Town. I mean, it's really tiny, small, 10,000 people town. There is nothing happening.
So
It's good to have childhood there, but no more.
So your curiosity, your passion to explore, your free spirit, your desire to go see the world and figure out yourself and life and whatever it is that you wanted to do. When you got to your uncle's,
Yeah.
he was one shocked that you were going to stay there until you figured it out. But
No, he and his wife, he's like, I saw it in their eyes, and then we talk about it later. Like few years later, they're like, I remember I flew in on Friday evening. They made a dinner. We sitting, and they're like, I'm like, okay, Margarita, what are you gonna do there here? I'm like, okay, like on Monday, I will go look for a job. And they're like, uh, people live here years, cannot find a job, and all of that stories. I'm like, okay, how is it related to me? Let's watch me. And on Monday, as I promised, I went. I bought. It was back then still was newspaper advertisement for job, look like all of that, Yellow Pages or something like that. I went like, okay, this, and this. I'm interested. Okay, long story short, 2 weeks later, I went to my job. First day, working day at my new job. And it was pretty good one, and I'm like extremely happy it happened because I finished management in university, and it was management of production plants, and I got hired by a company who produced the canned fish, and they had a plant, and they need somebody to manage it. It's not like I managed the whole plant, but I was making the decision what to do, what to bring, making sure everything on time and it's working, all of that. So, and I'm like, wow. And I maybe was one of the whole group in university who find a job according to what we study.
Mhm.
And it was pretty good pay and everything. And I'm like, wow, rent an apartment like in a month or two maybe, and start living my life in the new city. I know, it's crazy. When people are talking to them, they're like, why are you doing that? I'm like, that's how I believe in it. And we talk about it in Montana. When you have something inside of you, you cannot neglect. There's some bug which like telling you have to do it, and you can neglect it for some period of time, but eventually it will do. And somehow by the time I finish my university, I learned to listen it, because whatever I decide, it turns out pretty better than if I didn't do that step.
Mhm.
So, and I was working at that company. 6 months later, I got promoted to the head of purchasing department. And the job was to fly around the world, making connections, not flying, not many flying, but making connections to purchase the fish for plant. And it was 10 metric tons of fish. I mean, thousands metric tons of fish. So it's like the whole ships or something, a lot of containers. And I'm like, okay, when my boss told me, Margarita, we consider you for that position, I was like, guys, I just finished university. People like working for that position for the half of their lives. I'm like, are you sure I'm okay to do it? Kind of, I was like hesitated about it. They're like, oh yeah, sure. I'm like, okay. That's what free spirit you talk about. That's kind of what lead me to something different.
It reminds me of the Maya Angelou quote that she says that of all the virtues, courage is the most important, because without courage, none of the rest of the virtues, you can't do any of them. And you have to look up the actual quote, but I'm hearing your story, right? And your parents are imprinted in a mindset of being predetermined. Their life is predetermined. You're watching it, you're experiencing it. And then in 1991, you're given opportunity to do it differently. And you're like, I want to exercise my right to choose a different life, choose a different future, not have it planned out for me. That takes a tremendous amount of courage, because it was unpredictable. It was like, I'm just going to fly to this city. And some people spend their whole lives, years trying to find a job there, or however long, not their whole lives. They obviously have a job, but they spend a long time trying to get a job. and you just believed in yourself and had the courage to say, okay, I'm just going to figure it out. Within 2 weeks, get the job. Then you get the promotion when people had spent years in their jobs wanting the promotion. And then you didn't even know if you believed in yourself, but your managers and your superiors said, oh no, you got this, you'll be fine. And you're like, okay, I'll dive into the deep end again and figure it out. And in listening to the voice, I think that is so, when you have that little inkling in you that you are meant for more, that you want to do something more, when you suppress it, it eats away at you because you feel like you were supposed to live a more expansive, more courageous, more adventurous life. And then when you suppress it, you try to surrender to the imprints of your upbringing or the imprints of the community or environment around you, but you feel like your soul is dying. You feel like you're suffocating inside. And at some point, you have to make that decision that I'm going to do it differently. Even if nobody believes in me, even if everybody thinks I'm crazy, I'm still going to do it. And then what I think is amazing, because you and I share this in common, is that when you make that choice and you start doing the things, people start showing up. You start experiencing wins. Your trust and your confidence in yourself increases. And then you get this momentum going in a new direction that is like, okay, I got this. Even if it's messy, even if I stumble, even if I fall down, even if nobody believes in me, even if I have to make new friends, I can figure it out. And you still bring what you valued of your family, which is building those friendships, creating that collaboration, creating that community. You bring it into this new version of you and this new life path of yours, and you pick up friends. I mean, like you and I, you pick up friends on your new path. And I love this story so much because it's such a courageous journey. Okay, so now let's pick up to where we're at.
Yeah, it all sounds like a fairy tale, but to me, it's just, as you were talking, it took courage to get out of small town, but it was deep inside before I get out. I realized it. Even like my parents, when I was in daycare, and you have to go to school at 7 years old, back in Soviet Union. But my daycare, somehow they have experimental program when they accept kids from 6 years old, like pre-K or K, something like that. And I'm like, and they were accepting kids, and my parents said, no, she's too small. We're not gonna start an education from 6. And then I went to manager of a daycare when all the kids slept, was having a nap. And I'm like, I want to go to that class.
Wait, hold on, stop.
I know.
Daycare. Your parent, okay, so you're 6 years old, and your parents tell you can't do this thing. And so then you wait for all the kids to fall asleep. And then you...
Yes. And then I went to director, they call it back then, of daycare. And I say, no, they were testing kids. If kids strong enough, can read or cannot read, to get in a class. And I passed the test because I can read and everything. But my parents said, oh no, she's too small. Let's keep her in daycare. So, and then as usual pass. That's the logic of my parents, as we did. So, and I'm like, I went to director, and I want you to take me to that class, because if I will not go, I will bored with other kids. And then my mom in the evening come pick me up, and the manager of daycare is like, okay, guys, what are you doing? Your child wants to study and you're trying to hold it on. And that's how I did. So it was kind of, and it was a good thing and bad thing. Now I think it's good, but back then it gives me a lot of troubles with my parents too. And in school and everything, because it's kind of out of box or whatever you call it. So it wasn't, I'm not saying it was difficult. It was how it was for me, and it was natural. But I had some problems on the way. Let's say it this way.
I think that was called stubborn a lot.
Yeah. Or rebeller, or something. I didn't do anything mega crazy, but it was beyond what my parents would want me to do. Let's call it this way. So I went to this Kaliningrad, and I got a job. I got promoted, and then there was international seafood show, because Russia already, it was 2006. Russia was open to all the countries, exchange and business and everything. It was pretty good years for the country. And there was international seafood show, and my boss said me, okay, Margarita, you in Moscow, and you have to fly. You have to go there and meet as many potential suppliers as you could, because we have big plant expansion plans and all of that. I'm like, okay. I went there, like, I have to go, I go. I went there and talked to many people, trying to get any connections. And then I talked to some company from United States. They had a big seafood business, and the creators of the company, the owners, were from former Soviet Union, different, like Kazakhstan and like different countries. And so we speak in Russian, and their business was international seafood business with a lot of Russia and Soviet Union countries. So I'm like, oh, okay, we had connected. And then 2 months later, I went to another show like that in China. And for me, girl from my tiny town, 1 year after university, to go on business trip to China, it was something beyond imagination. Frankly, beyond. But I'm like, okay, it has to be done. Let's go. And then it's okay. Long story short, at that seafood show in Moscow, I met back then my future husband, now my ex-husband. Yes, we met in China too, and then we had couple trips, and then he proposed. I got married back to mom and moved with him to United States.
So he was American.
He moved to America in 1991, I believe, or 92. When I said it's all happening, when people start immigrating to United States, he from Soviet Union.
Okay. So he was from Soviet Union, moved to America in 1991 when everyone was had the option to chose
Yes,
out.
yes.
You met him in China.
Yes, he is one of the entrepreneur guy. So
he was an entrepreneur.
Who saw the opportunity and used it.
Okay. Wow. And
that's how I end up in the United States. And my friend who went to United States for summer job, she got back, she got car, so she earned some money. And we were like, okay. And to me, back then, she said, like, Margarita, if you put your foot on United States soil, you would never go back. I'm like, what are you talking? And for me, it was somewhere like flying to Mars now. Like, okay, it's somewhere, maybe cool. I don't know. And I'm like, what are you talking about? Like, I know you. And then 1.5 years later, I getting married. He's American, and I'm moving to United States. It's not like it was my goal, but and I talk it like, you send some requests to universe, and then it's somehow maybe different way, not you expected, it's happening. That's quite the story for that to prove that part.
It was both and, because it was also you took action on things that you wanted to start doing differently. You were pursuing things, you were making progress, and the universe conspired with you to make some things happen. So I want you to describe, you've now been to Russia, Soviet Union, China, and around Lithuania, different parts of.
Yeah.
When you got to the United States for the first time, what was that like for you?
I think I have to mention that I did not come to United States as an immigrant with one suitcase, which my ex-husband did when he moved here, and he has to establish with no English, establish him from grounds. Mm-hmm. I moved, and he already had a house, he had kids from previous marriage, and I was pretty sad. I moved to the environment pretty well organized. I don't have to go work for minimum wage. I had to learn English. I didn't speak much. So it was different experience. I want to be clear on that, so nobody has an illusions. it was all well settled for me to come. And after that, we got 3 kids in a row. So it was happening like I moved in November 2007. That's actually 17 years will be this month. And in 2013, we already had 3 kids. So it was happened quickly. We decided to do it. So raise kids all together. They could be friends. And I was mostly like stay-at-home mom. But my ex-husband has a lot of projects and ideas, and I learned some accounting, United States accounting, and I did some of that. So you participate in some projects. So I never had a job until I divorced. And then like, that's time. I was never afraid of it. It just was different setup. So for me and the family, and it was more valuable for me stay, take care of kids than those apathetic.
So from a culture perspective, though, for you coming to the U.S., what did it feel like? What were the people like to you? What was society like for you? Did it look like? From compared to where you were from? What was it like?
I could tell when I came. My ex-husband and his kids, some of them were pretty grown up, 16, 15. They made an how you say, welcome party? Yes. So they invite friends, and I'm like, okay, how I gonna talk to your friends if I don't speak any English? I mean, I did, but I was like, believe me, all Russian people came.
Oh, everyone spoke Russian.
Everybody. Like, even now, I have all of my friends, mostly Russian speaking. Let's say not Russian because it's not politically correct nowadays.
Okay.
Yes, it's like Russian, Ukrainian, some Lithuanian. So it's most of them are Russian speaking because I love to have American friends. Thank you, Staci.
I can only speak English with you, though.
Yeah, that's fine. But it's how it is. Chinese people live in Chinese society, Chinese daycare. Here, my kids never been introduced to English before 4 years old. Russian speaking at home. Then 2 of them went to daycare, Russian daycare. So you try to keep, because in America, we knew for sure. And my ex-husband learned it with their 3 kids first because they tried to speak English. So they catch up, they blend in society faster. But then they realize that they will speak English anyway. It's very difficult to keep Russian in place. So, and my kids went to Russian school to learn how to read, write in Russian, and all of that. And then when they got to school, 3 months later, they speak English. That's it.
Yeah. My grandparents on my Filipino side, they spoke Tagalog. And then on my mom's side, which is Italian, they spoke Italian. But when they came over to America, my great-grandparents did. Well, my grandfather on my Filipino side did, and then my great-grandparents on my mother's side did. They wanted to be American so badly that they stopped speaking their dialect. And so they didn't teach the younger generation the language. And I wish that they did. I wish that I knew both those languages. And of course, I have personal responsibility and I could go learn them. I have not done that yet. But I think it's because America is a melting pot. I think it's beautiful to keep up traditions of what you had that was important to you, like your dialect or things that matter to you. So I think it's really cool that you taught your kids their home language.
Yeah, that's pretty much the job to keep the language. And my older one speaks very well. And my younger one try not to speak unless he has to. But they totally understand that how it works with young one. I'm talking to him in Russian and he replies in English. So I'm like, okay, if he needs to speak, he will.
Yeah.
And what you said when immigrants back then came to United States, they tried to blend in, so fit in a society so badly, they trying to forget their own language. and did not teach the kids, so there was no discrepancy. But it's totally different nowadays.
Yeah.
And yeah, and for me, frankly speaking, doesn't matter how much I want to sound American, never gonna happen.
I'm like, okay, wait, slow down, please. I'm trying to read lips, but your lips aren't even natural.
I'm sorry, guys. I'm sorry, everyone.
I love it. I love it. I just also want to understand you.
It's like, when they show in movie for Russian spies and they blend in the United States,
Yeah.
like during World War II, I'm like, it's impossible. Not World War II, Cold War, it's impossible. They,
Yeah.
they have to grow up in this.
Yeah.
Don't have accent. I'm like, that's all BS movies.
Yeah.
So it's funny.
So when you came to America, were there any mental shifts that you had to make that like continued your evolution of this desire to choose, make personal choice?
For me, it was, since I was mostly work from home, stay at home, I didn't have big exposure to, let's say, parties or communication with American. Like, it didn't happen. It was pretty much secluded lifestyle. And I had to study English to learn it, to somehow to communicate. It was another process. And for me, first it was like every Russian say that, I believe. It's like how everybody smile at you and ask, how are you? Because we Russians, like, that's it. Why should I waste my time on emotions, for other people? I mean, now it's changing. It's changing in Russia too. But where I came from, it was very unusual.
Wait, okay, so this is interesting because where you came from, the thing that you liked was the community and the friendship and all of that. But on the streets, people did not do that with each other.
No, unless you know a person, you can stop and talk to a person, smile, say hi and all of that. But if you don't know a person, why should you smile to them?
Interesting. Is it that you didn't trust them, or you just didn't like them, or
the Russian serious people? They have serious faces, and just like that's how you can buy who is Russian, who is not. Again, it is changed, but it was how it was before.
That's interesting. So when I moved to Texas, I live in Texas, and Southern hospitality is a real thing. And when I moved here, I remember going like, why is this stranger talking to me in the grocery store? Like, I don't know you. Did you just pickpocket me or something? Like, I don't understand why you're talking to me. And so that was like a culture shift, just even in America, going from where I was in Texas. And I loved it. I was like, oh, people are so nice. And they really do care about their neighbors and they want to help each other out and they want to have community and conversation and they want to know each other. But that wasn't where I came from. And where I came from, you only talked to who you knew and you didn't talk to who you didn't know. And it wasn't like stranger danger. It was just culturally, it wasn't that way. And so you learned how to smile to a stranger on the street.
Yes, I'm positive person, I like to smile, but it was so unusual. And I'm like, why are they talking to me? And I don't speak English much. And everybody to whom I say two words, they say, your English is so well. I'm like, yeah, right, guys.
Your English is really good. It is really, really good.
I have a lot of room for improvements. But it just, it was funny. And it was really cultural shock, how you call it.
Yes.
And now as my old Russian friends, whenever we go and traveling anywhere, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, she's talking to strangers again." I mean, when you go in the elevator, you talk to somebody like smoke talk. I'm like, I'm a queen of smoke talk. Why you forbid me to do that? We're just kidding, just joking. I love it. But it was some Russian people back then. It's all changes. It's 35 years history of immigration, right, from Soviet Union, pretty much. And it's changing, shifting, and people in Russia are different now and change. But back then it was really shocking. And sometimes I feel like it's so fake. Like, you know, the half of the world saying, "Oh, Americans so fake. They smile at you, but they don't even care about you." I'm like, I understand they don't care about me, but they at least they smile, not going with a grumpy face. So, and it's I don't know how it happened in United States and what the historical base for that, but it is amazing. And even if it's not always genuine or something, but I love it. And going to the grocery stores, I know pretty much most of the cashiers, and you have small talk. Why not? What's so shocking about it? Now it is. I love it.
I'm curious because you made a comment that the rest of the world thinks that Americans don't
Not
care.
rest. I said half of the world. So
Okay, half of the world. What do you think that half of the world would want Americans to know or want Americans to see about them that for whatever reason they think we're not?
I mean, there is a huge idea that America is fake country, you know, and somehow Americans fake people. I don't know where it came from. I mean, America has extremely amazing promotional skills as a country when it was founded, and it's amazing. I mean, like, there is no country like United States. It has maybe shortest history of all most of the countries with long history. I'm not sure. I'm not talking about the country that was split recently, but it did absolutely different approach than the rest, the old world, as they call it, moving from Europe.
When you say fake, is it that people think that Americans have lost their soul, like it's all just flashy and showy? Or
I think at some point there was some many nationalities look at America like that. It's like fake, all McDonald's, which is not food. We like eat potato, which is food, where you grow up with and not just buy and don't even know how it came to it. You know, all of that. And and at the same point, at some point, I'm not sure how now world look at it. Countries would admire in United States. How the economics grew, how everything happened. How country, which was created a couple centuries ago, literally become the one of the most important country in the world. I think it's I don't know who you have to invite for that topic, but it is amazing topic for podcast.
Yes. I think it's interesting that the sentiment of fake, because I think there's a lot of people in America who would agree, like there's seed oil and there's fake meat and there's actual GMO and things are not real. And then even just what we do aesthetically to ourselves to make ourselves look a certain way. And one of my personal passions is restoring dinner tables and really restoring that authenticity. And and I think there can be two ideas at the same time, right? So you can hold this idea that maybe there's some artificialness to America. You can also hold this idea that there is also some fundamental values and truths about America, like the right to choose and the right to own property and the right to pursue passions that you like and be rewarded for it. That can also be true. And we can hold these two maybe challenging ideas and learn to integrate them in a society. And I will have to have another podcast where how did somebody come to America and invent America out of nothing and create this infrastructure and all of that, which I just am curious about all these things. Did you ever start a business?
I did. I have my coaching business.
So what was that like for you? Because that was totally creating something out of nothing.
Yeah, and I have a project that's not live yet, but I have a big vision for that. Not sure how it turns out, and it's That's what we talk about, the entrepreneurship mind. I'm not sure how to say it right, and the salary mind. And I grew up in salary mind society, and for me, like I know people who back then was have business virtue in them. I did not, my family did not, and it took a lot of mental work to, frankly speaking, overcome that I can do something on my own and not depend on like salary or something.
How did you change that mindset? How did you go from a salary mindset to an entrepreneurial mindset?
I used to work for Microsoft after my divorce. I used to work for Microsoft, the product manager, and it was pretty decent salary and paid like it was good, and I liked the job. And at the same time, I went to study for coaching. I didn't look at it as my profession, or it was hobby, because I like, as I talked before, I like to talk to people, and it's kind of each person is a little riddle you have to solve, and coaching teach you how to ask the questions, to unfold whatever deep might be, as long as person ready to talk about it. And I'm like, oh, okay, it will be useful in any activity I will do. And then I start practicing with clients, because you have to get some like 100 hours to get certified, and then more clients start coming. And I'm like, okay, and then it become my kind of second job, and then at some point I had a tragedy in my life, and I realized I could not fulfill my position at Microsoft. I mean, like mental and everything, I was out of reality, and I had to just take a break, just to be from day to day, just for me, for my kids, my parents. And I quit Microsoft. And then when I kind of get back on my feet, I'm like, okay, what I want to do? I can go and hire back to tech companies, or I could try to do something different. That's why I start doing coaching as a business. I set it up as a business and all of that. So that's how I'm doing it. I'm not sure what I'm going to do tomorrow. Maybe, who knows? With my attitude, what's going to happen tomorrow. But I like it, and it's working, and I have one project I'm working on. We'll see how that goes. So I have a lot of ideas. I like to study. Right now I'm in another education, which is amazing. Maybe we can do another podcast for that part, which is, it's really fascinating, because I went to that not like to have it as my profession, but if I know that, I could read people better and understand what's going on with them, what they need, and it's just like curiosity of mine, like pure curiosity. And turns out it's like, I'm like, wow, people might really need it, that information. So it's there is a theory, which I don't remember the name, have a book. And the theory was created in 1960s in United States. And how it created, they were trying to cure the schizophrenia. How you say it, right? And they start study people, and they start learn how people grew up, what siblings they had, position, and all of that. And it turns out that the whole theory, which has very practical support, that what depends on the order of the born and who you have, older brother, younger sister, all of that, or you only child, it's determined the whole behavior of a person, most of it, not whole, of course, for the rest of the life, because that's what person see in childhood. They took the 10 years gap before person 10 years, and that's what imprinted in your head. I mean, for me, I have older brother. What do I know? I know that there are always older men. The boy who can come and stand up for me if I need, right? I can count on him, and he will take care of me, and all of that. And it's pretty German in my head. I do not live by that, but that's the core setup. It's very interesting. It's another story. It's totally another story. And that's out of curiosity. I believe that's out of curiosity. That's how I end up where I am. So maybe that's the main driving force. But I want to say, like how world look at America and everything. I remember very distinctive thought of mine when I came to USCIS for my citizenship interview. And you sit in the waiting room, and there is a lot of people from all over the world, different nationalities, and they all like applying for citizenship. And I sit and it just hit me that if person comes, for example, to Russia, like French guy moved to Russia, he will never be Russian, even if he get a passport. He will never be Russian. Same as Russian went to France or Norway or China. You cannot assimilate, you cannot blend and become that nation. But United States, that's the only country when it's possible. Because at some point, everybody came here and become the citizen of United States. And it's unbelievable. It's, I don't know, maybe people can think it's fake or something, but it's a huge idea that became the reality. For how many? Like 350 millions of United States.
You could be any nationality and you can come to America and be American.
Yes. You might not your life as true American who grew up here. Like Chinese people live some fusion of American life with Chinese, same as Russian nationality, but you are American. And it's funny, today is the election day. We're not talking about it, but it's just funny how it happened.
I know. We're recording this on the election day. Go figure.
No talking.
What I just think is so interesting is I feel like, that we're talking about two girls from different worlds. And I grew up in America and I had a lot of choice. Like I could choose to buy property. I could choose to practice my faith. I could choose to leave the country. I could choose to come back. I can build wealth. I could choose my education. I could choose my career. I had a lot of choice. And you grew up in a world that you didn't have a lot of choice. And a lot was predetermined for you. And then you had a transition from it being predetermined to having choice. And there was some spark inside of you that drove you to exercise that choice. From the time you were 6 years old, I want to choose this special class to go into. I want to study. I want to learn. And you continue to lean into that to the point where you now are in America and you're choosing to own property. You're choosing to start a business. You're choosing to practice the things that you want to practice that are important to you. And I think it's just such a fascinating journey to see how two people who had two very different backgrounds still like the same thing, which is we like to be able to choose. We like to choose what we feel is most aligned for us. We like to choose how we invest our time. We like to choose what we study. We like to choose family and bring unity around our dinner tables. And even though we had different mental imprints in our upbringing, we still value very similar things, which I think is a human thing. Humans value belonging. Humans value connection. Humans value being able to put hard work into something that's meaningful and be rewarded for it. We value that as human beings. And I love that we were able to share this story because it shows that America can be a place where we can do that. And other countries can choose to transition to do that as well if they want to exercise those rights to choose. So thank you for sharing your journey, your story. And you have so much courage and resilience and grit. I don't know what I would have done if I was raised in your upbringing.
Oh, don't get me wrong. I love my childhood. And you said about the choice. I totally agree with you because what is life? It's everyday choices we make. I could not choose to do a podcast with you, right? Or depends what I choose to eat. It all reflects how I'm gonna look 5 years later, you know? And it's tiny, tiny choices. Sometimes we, and every person in life, I believe, did huge choices, scary, logical, maybe against to parents or pro something person believes, and that's what shaping the life. And as funny as it sounds from my side, and it's all of this adventure lifestyle, it's not every day as it is, but some choices at some point of life that what brings me here, where I am right now. I'm trying to teach that to my kids, to I'm saying, like, guys, you have tons of opportunities. You have tons of choices. And they know the story and everything. They totally understand from what perspective I'm talking about. And like, you just have to use it
I
and,
think so,
and make your choices.
because of the part that prevents people from making a choice is thinking that they don't have a choice. Like, you were 6 years old, and even though you were in a home and in a environment that did not want you to go to that special additional study, even at 6 years old, you waited for the kids to go to sleep, got up, went to the manager supervisor and said, I want to do this. And a lot of people would think, even in that environment, that they didn't have a choice. And so the expansion of our minds to see options instead of roadblocks is the foundation of choice.
Yep. And I have no idea what pushing me back then when I was 6. I believe it's curiosity. I think it's curiosity. What, like, the choices, making choices, not choices, going extra mile or not. It's all about the curiosity, what you want to explore and to see what's after that. I think it's very, I mean, like, interest. That's how I believe all inventions were created. It was curiosity. What if it will work? Same as United States creation. Okay, we go and we'll see what it is. And all of that. And I think the sense of interest in person, that's the driving force for people. And I see it when people don't have interest, like I see it in teenagers, some older people, right? And it's sad. I mean, it's their choice, whatever, but why you're not so curious to explore it? You have so many opportunities.
Well, I hope then that everyone who even made it this far and listened to all episode, you enjoyed the experience shares of mainly more the emphasis of her story than my story, but mine a little bit intertwined. And most people who are listening to this are probably listening in America. So you have your own version of your story that you can compare and contrast with Margarita's. And I hope you do that and let us know in the comments what your experience was like and what you have learned from the evolution of choice versus a predetermined path. And then also, going back to curiosity, this is like the teaser to encourage people to travel and pursue things firsthand so you can gain insights. And I think that, to your point, Margarita, that all starts with curiosity. Like seeing what could happen. What if I go to this city and get a new job? What would that be like? If I pursue a higher education, what would that look like? If I read that book, what might happen? And you never know until you take that first action. So I hope that everyone listening, this sparks your curiosity to dive deeper into something that you have in your soul or that little inkling in the back of your mind that's like, hey, I want to do that. I hope this gives you the courage to go do it. So,
and for me, just one more phrase. For me, it was like the brain looks for stability, like to make sure at least something guaranteed, right? And when I was doing all my choices, like back then when I was still living in Russia, For me, it was okay. I still have my town, tiny town, where my parents live, in one bedroom apart. I can always get back. That's guaranteed. But what if? And that what if is it's make all the difference.
And the what if makes you feel alive.
Yeah. And it
So,
feels,
mhm.
I mean, there is like a lot of theories right now how universe work, how different paths of the reality at the same time, and all of that. And I kind of believe in it. It's like if I didn't go there, my life would be different.
Mhm.
If I didn't make that choice, it would be different.
Mhm.
Maybe it would be better, maybe worse. I don't know. But that's how you jump in from one decision to another and how it altered your life.
Mhm. Mhm.
Thank you, Staci, so much. It was amazing. I talked too much as usual.
It was amazing, and you did so good. I was sometimes when you and I get talking, we get so excited and it goes so fast. And I understood everything and your insights and your perspective and your experience shares, and I just love you more with all of your courage and your resilience and your grit. And so I look forward to having you back on and talking about coaching and the mind and how the mind looks for stability and ways we can work
Yeah, I
with.
believe we can have few more topics to discuss.
Yeah.
We'll see how it goes. And also, thank you so much, Staci. I'm so happy to meet you. You're such an angel. Like the way you look into people, I could feel it from that steak house in Montana. But I want to, like, we're saying, like, oh, gain all your friends when you're young, or when you're at university. When you're like older, it's impossible. Like, there is no more friends. I don't know what people talking about.
Mhm.
I frankly speaking have no idea, because I have my friends from school, university, whom I communicate to. Some of them live in different part of world, some of them in Russia, and I'm still gaining friends on the way now, and I'm above 40. We have to talk a little bit age uh, propaganda in Russia, but it's different story. So
This podcast was
even at 41, even at 41, I'm gaining some friends. It's a miracle. So that's what
love our friendship, and we'll have many more conversations. And thank you everyone for staying with us this long. And I hope this blesses you and encourages you to comment and share your experiences. And of course, go travel and see the world and living with life with a lens of curiosity. Cheers, y'all.
Thank you. Bye.